So, the things to do now. Because of the nature of overlocking, we don't have to double turn the hems if we overlock them first. I've experimented with overlocking straight across before I've done both legs, but in fact I think I prefer to do it this way, which is to overlock round the edge, then turn it in and hem on my normal sewing machine. So that's what I'm going to do with both of the legs, and then with the waist. I'm going to overlock all of these edges before I turn them. I then only have to turn them once. So, it's a bit fiddly because you have to slide it under the foot at an angle, like this. Then we accept we lose a tiny bit of fabric at the beginning because we want to create a nice clean edge like this. And when you're using an overlocker, you must be sure that you don't catch this underneath bit of fabric under the foot plate and therefore cut a big hole in your thing that you're making. Because this knife is very sharp and will cut through anything that it can. When I get towards this part here, I can see that I want to maintain a straight line with that little bit there, that seam there. I have to head for that, but then turn off quite quickly. Like that. These are all the bits of threads that come off the machine. And there we have a turned seam, done quite quickly, which I'm then going to be able to hem on my normal sewing machine with a nice straight line, or even double stitching if you've got a double needle or 2 rows of stitching, and that will hold that down very nicely. I'm going to do the same with this leg, and I'm going to do the same with the waistband. Right, we've now got our entire trousers all made, all stitched together, and the edges prepared for a very simple hem process. I'm going to do the legs first. I'm going to take this piece off here because it makes it easier. I'm going to increase my stitch size to bigger because it's more on show and it's a bit of a better edge. And I can see that I'm nice and straight across there. Now, it's very sensible to pop a pin in just to make sure you don't go completely skew off and end up with the seam changing sizes halfway around. So I'll put a pin in that side and a pin in that side, and you can see how big your hem is by measuring it on your machine or with the tape measure. As I said before, I do acknowledge that many of the people using scrubs will have to change the lengths of their trousers. It's much easier to shorten than to lengthen them, and if we do make some sizes specifically for very small people. I had a lady who was 4'11" who asked for a size 4, so we ran up those. So I'm hoping those fitted her quite nicely. A lot of the scrubs available to the NHS are extra large, and for many of the women in particular this is quite difficult. So if anybody has some of the Upstitcher scrubs or anything that we've made here in Uppingham, feel free to cut the bottoms off or send them back and we'll shorten them. Okay, so we've taken this bit off so we can whiz round. I'm going to put, as I did that time before, I'm going to move the number 4 on my machine, which pushes the needle over to the left hand side, so I'm sewing close to the edge without actually having to move off the fabric with the foot of my machine. So the waistband is done in the same way as we've done the bottoms of the legs, but we're going to start at the front, go all the way round back to the front. We're going to turn the seam over. Now we're going to make it big enough to thread through a fabric tie that we're going to make at the very end. You can use tape, you can use elastic if you have some wide elastic. My preference, to be honest, is a tape, a tie, because you can then adjust it deliberately for the person who is going to be wearing it. We're going to make it about that. This is just under 1 inch deep. You can make it a bit wider if you'd like to. But the thing to remember is you're using the front seam and you're going to start and stop about an inch each side, or 3/4 of an inch each side of that centre front seam, because we have to leave room for the tie to go all the way through. So I'm going to pin all this down all the way around, remembering it's on a bit of an angle, so we've just got to be careful how we lie it flat, and then we're going to stitch it close again to this seam here, which is all beautifully bonded down, and so we can then thread our tie through. So I'll see you when I've finished all that hemming. Right, we have now stitched all the way around the waistband, leaving a channel to thread a tie through, and there's the point where we're going to be poking it in, bringing it round and threading it out again. We've hemmed the bottoms of the legs, we have seamed beautifully so there's no fraying anywhere. The only thing we have to do now is make a tie. For this you can use a long piece of tape if you've got some nice broad strong tape, or you can use a piece of off-cut fabric. Make a long strip of it, because there was on the fabric that we had, and I'm going to make it into a very long thin strip. Not that I'm going to turn it inside out on itself, but I am going to stitch it down so that we can then thread a narrow strip that matches through the trousers. Let me show you what we're going to do. Now, you may remember that furry edge, the selvage on our fabric. Here it is. I saved it after we did our cutting out. So I'm actually going to trim that off, because it makes the thickness too great if I keep it on. I'm going to just slide straight down here. Nice sharp dressmaking scissors, you see. And so this, I haven't measured this, the length of this. I make it nice and long. Basically, I put it twice around myself and think that's probably going to be about right, because there's room for a bow. Now let's have a look and see how wide that is. We'll fold it in half. Let's see what width we've got. We certainly don't want it too wide. If we fold it in half again, we're trying to make sure we've got some nice, a nice strip that we can fold. I think that's actually, even when I fold it like this, that's going to be too wide. Because the principle that we're going to use, if I get the end here, is that we fold one side into the middle and the other side into the middle, and then we fold it together like that, so that we have a tape that's just stitched very neatly down one edge. This bit here at the end, you'll be thinking, oh, it's a bit tatty, that one. So before we stitch it, we'll tuck that in there, just so we've got a little tied in edge there, and like a sandwich with all the frayed bits are going to be inside. But because I'm looking at that and thinking, now how wide is that? That's actually a bit too tight in my band that I've made there, my stitch band. So the first thing I'm going to do, having cut one side off, is to just make it a bit narrower all the way along. And I don't have to do that by cutting it all the way along. I fold it back up and cut a bit off the side. We've now got our strip, which is about the right width to make a tie waistband. I'm now going to press it straight down with the iron, straight down the middle, so that it's very much easier to see how we turn it to get it even. I've pressed the tie so that I can see where the middle of it is. I press that end down. I'm now going to turn the sides, both of the sides, in towards the central pressed area, and I'm going to put a pin in there. Further down here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold one side in, fold the other side in, fold the two up. What you'll notice is that actually when you pull it tight, the other bits just roll in really nicely, so that you don't have to spend too long pinning an inch at a time. You can just pin 10 inches at a time and then roll it in. This may take me a little while. I've pinned the tie all the way down. Just to secure the end, I'm going to stitch across here. I'm then going to pivot the needle in the fabric, turn it round. Actually, what I am going to do is just move that across to the middle again. There we go. My needle's now back in the middle position. And then I'm going to stitch down this seam all the way to the end. Join me later. So, here we have a nice long tie that we are now going to thread through our waistband. There are probably a lot of very good gadgets to enable you to do this. This is my gadget. It's called a safety pin. Some ladies continue to use their children's nappy pins from a long time ago, which are actually really good because they have a clasp on the top that stops this coming undone as you're going round. Put it through, slide it across. You can feel all the way. If you choose to use elastic rather than a tie, use exactly the same principle. You're just threading through all the way round. Takes a bit of a while, but just when you get to this point here at the seam junction, just remember, just think about which way the seam is going and make it a bit easier. Well, there we are, all we're going through there. And we've pushed the safety pin, has gone all the way round and now comes out at the gap at the front. So we'll even the ends up as much as we can. Spread this out. And then we can take off the safety pin. There we have our waistband with a tie. When we turn them the right way out and when they are tied up, they go down on the inside of the trouser. That is definitely intentional. It's so that we don't, people working with patients don't have to have dangly bits of bows tied around them. So let's just get a look, shall we? Shall we see if it worked? So we have made a pair of bottoms, trousers for our scrub set, and done on the overlocker. They took about 20 minutes. And we've made our top, which, let me just grab the top, add it to our set, which is here. All I'm going to do now is press them, bag them, and then they will be going out for our dentists, our doctors, our nurses and our district nurses and all our care workers going into people's houses. Enjoy your set.